So I think expanding my network was a big shift in terms of the kind of career opportunities that I was able to then find myself with.
Welcome to the Rethink Desi Reframe Series podcast, where we highlight the voices and experiences of change makers working towards social equity within the South Asian community. In each episode, we interview people who are leading the way in areas such as education, healthcare, social justice, art, and entrepreneurship. I'm Arpita Sharma, your host and co-founder of Rethink Desi, a project to unpack what it means to be South Asian locally and globally. Have you ever wanted to work on issues in international development, but didn't know how to find your pathway? Well, our guest for this episode has done just that. Kumar is the communications manager for BRAC's Ultra Poor Graduation Initiative, which has touched 2.1 million households in Bangladesh and helps 95% of participants graduate from extreme poverty. We'll delve into Anu's journey as well as learn about the organization and their work. Join us for a thought-provoking episode of the Reframe series. So we have Anu Kumar with us. She is a communications manager at BRAC, and she is responsible for the Ultra Poor Graduation and Initiative's digital communications, including the engagement and management of digital platforms for BRAC. So prior to joining BRAC UPGI, Anu was the communication specialist for the Economic Analysis and Research Network, the EARN Network, at the Economic Policy Institute, or EPI, as we fondly refer to it, which is focused on outreach and advocacy for issues centering racial, gender, and worker justice. And Anu has supported communications efforts at think tanks such as the Council on Foreign Relations and New America. She also worked as a consultant at APCO Worldwide, supporting projects and communication strategies for governments, corporations, and nonprofits. As a first-generation daughter of immigrants from South India, she is passionate about contributing to an organization based in and serving the Global South. And Anu holds a master's in intercultural and international communications from the School of International Service at American University. She also has received her bachelor's in journalism and international studies from Indiana University in Bloomington. So excited to have you here with us today, and just so fascinated both by your background and all of the amazing things that you've been working on. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for holding a space for these kinds of conversations. I think it's really great.
Well, we're excited to delve in and ask you some questions in this space as well. So I want to ask you, how did you get involved in communications work for nonprofits that are focused on social change?
So my background really comes from journalism and writing, so I've always been pretty passionate about storytelling and making sure that underrepresented voices had a platform and a voice that was provided to them, so that their stories could be told. And that was really the passion point or entry, I would say, into communications work for me. I just felt as I progressed in my both academic career and professional experiences that I really enjoyed the advocacy element of storytelling, really using stories to further a cause, to really help push a certain perspective and to move on social change. That was a really big point for me. I just felt that there was a strong use for storytelling and communications to help advocating for a better world, to advocate for a world that more people want to envision and to uplift people that are marginalized. And so that's the broad strokes of how I started thinking very interested in working in communications. I also felt that there was a pretty strong disconnect between policy and public understanding. So I felt like media communications was another way to sort of help bridge that gap. I felt that that was something that I could offer, or I could bring to the table as someone who wanted to be a part of social change, to really, again, help move the world in a more positive and progressive direction. And I think a lot of the time you're just trying to figure out where to slot yourself in and where you contribute the best you're able to with your skill set. And I felt that I had a good sense of understanding where policy issues were, and then trying to translate them for both public consumption but other key audiences that can help mobilize change. And then I fundamentally felt that great ideas need mobilization. And so for me, communication was a great way to be able to do that. You can really use messages and use stories to move people in a way that I think is quite powerful. And I think when done well, it could really change someone's perspective. It could really help motivate action. And I really wanted to use that in my career in different social issues that I helped support and been a part of. And that's what continues to keep me motivated.
That's really great. It sounds like you've really kind of honed in on the skill set and then been very strategic about how you want to utilize it in order to create changes in the world. That's awesome. So because you've been through a lot, right? So you had your bachelor's degree in journalism, and then you also did your master's in like intercultural and international communications work. And then you've been working for a lot of these different types of organizations that are really focused on social justice and equity and kind of improving kind of opportunities for people both locally and globally. So in kind of that process, what kind of challenges have you encountered?
I think for a lot of people, depending on what your background is, it can just be challenging to break through and identify opportunities that sort of fit the vision that you have for your career. I think for me, I was lucky that I had, I'm a very supportive family, very supportive parents in terms of academic pursuits and professional pursuits, but they also, don't necessarily have, didn't have a strong understanding of like the career landscape or even helping me navigate, academic choices and things like that. So I think for me, at the very start of my academic and professional career, a lot of it was just trying to decipher how to enter spaces that I didn't feel like I necessarily belonged in or that I felt like I had access to. I know for sure, I think, entering DC for my graduate degree was like a big shifting point for me because I felt like I finally was able to sort of break into a network of job opportunities that I didn't previously have access to just because I didn't go to university in DC. I went to a public university in the Midwest, and I think that sort of changes what your access is to and who you know. So I think expanding my network was a big shift in terms of the kind of career opportunities that I was able to then find myself with in terms of internship opportunities with think tanks, even looking at opportunities within the government, things like that I never had access to before, even though I'd tried applying, many years prior. I think it just shifted a little bit when the network expanded, which I think is natural and it often happens. I think the other challenge is honestly, it's just being in workspaces that you envision the work to be one thing, but then in reality results in being something different. And perhaps it isn't aligned in the mission that you'd originally sought out to do or the work you'd sought out to do. So I think the beauty of the nonprofit industry is that there's so many different types of missions that exist. There's so many different people working towards social change, but that also can result in situations where the mission and vision is muddled and the way to get there can be kind of murky. And people struggle to find leadership or find their footing there. And when you work for different organizations that haven't quite found their footing, I think that can be a little bit challenging, especially as you're progressing in your career. I think that's something that can be difficult to try to identify how to solve and how to walk through, because sometimes it's a matter of like being a part of the team and really figuring out a path forward. And sometimes it's just recognizing that this isn't the space where you're best, that serves you best and that you don't serve best. And so I think trying to reassess some of those challenges can be pretty challenging as well. So I would say access and just having the right workspace have been two challenges that I've run into across my journey. I also think trying to figure out exactly what kind of organization, even within the nonprofit and social change space that I was best suited for has, been its own challenge. And I think it's a lot of trial and error. I think one benefit of being someone who works in communications is that you are a generalist in the sense that you have the ability to work on a lot of different subject matters because your expertise comes more in like writing and outreach and, social media writing and things of that nature, but you're not necessarily a subject matter expert. So trying to figure out like the perfect alignment of issues that I really cared about along with the skills that I could bring to the role have also been challenging, and I've learned a lot of lessons, through the different roles that I've had so far, and hope to continue to learn because I'm still feel like I'm pretty early on in my career and there's still a lot of growth that needs to happen. So yeah, I think that's something too, to just like highlight for people that are thinking about their own journey and the challenges that they might be running into is sometimes it's just a matter of trying to figure out the right balance between a good team, the right organization, the right issues, as well as a skill set that you bring to the table. And I think that's something that's an ongoing learning experience for me.
Yeah. So something I found really unique, I think, about you was when I originally met you, I kind of found you through the Earn Network, and then you were able to navigate from there to working for an organization that's working way more in the global South. And I'd love to know, how did you navigate between kind of the local context that you were in to kind of working in this very international space? Because I find that so interesting, and so I'm so curious as to how you were able to push and create those kind of moves in your career.
I think so. For me, one of the goals I've always had is to work for an organization that is more internationally focused. Hence, I got a master's in intercultural and international communication. So while I'm very focused on social change and obviously very invested in things that are happening within the US, I also think I just see myself more as a global citizen. I have a background where I was born outside the US, my family's from outside the US. And so I just have a lot of connective tissue to thinking about a lot of social issues on a global scale, as much as I think about them as they affect me as an American. So just to say that I've always had this sort of long-term goal of hoping to work in the international space. In terms of pivoting from working for EPI to now working for BRAC, which is a large NGO based in the global South, based out of Bangladesh, it was really a stroke of luck, I think, in some fashion, along with just the fact that I've been working and meeting people along the way. But I was recruited for my current position from my now boss, who's a great advocate and champion, I think. And she really saw that I had skills that would transfer well to this position. And she really was the person who, was we're looking to hire for this position. And we connected through LinkedIn, and that was where the connection and conversation started. And so I didn't know if the job would ultimately work out. And I'm really, really lucky and very fortunate and happy that it did. But it was truly just having, I think people know this now, but LinkedIn has become such a big space in terms of networking opportunities. But I think in real life too, as you meet people and you're just building your connections and you're reflecting that online, I think that can really shift and change the kind of opportunities you have. Because a lot of the jobs I've gotten have been through both applying for them, but also having information about the organization from someone who's worked there, or having someone recommend something to me because they know of my interest and they know of the opportunities I'm looking for. And so I think relationships really help you pivot in terms of what kind of opportunities you're looking for. Because I think the experience is great, and to continue to build that professional experience is really important, but it has to be paired with the relationships that you're also trying to cultivate with people. And obviously you and I know this, we met at a conference, it's just a key thing that you're looking for like-minded people in these spaces. And hopefully those relationships can get you closer to the kind of work that you're attempting to accomplish. And so I think it's really lucky when it happens that way. And that's how my current position came to be.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And so I kind of, I know we talked about it a little bit at the beginning about like what your position is at BRAC, but can you tell us a little bit about the organization and kind of the role that you're currently playing in your project and maybe what a day-to-day might look like?
Sure, I'm definitely happy to do that. So as I mentioned, BRAC is a NGO based out of Bangladesh, and the initiative I specifically work for is called the Ultra Poor Graduation Initiative, and we're really focused on scaling poverty alleviation through government in order to be able to reach as many people as we can in terms of pushing them out of poverty. So that's just like the top line goal. I think that's helpful to highlight. Uh, BRAC itself has a very rich history of work of over 50 years in Bangladesh. They do everything from, education and healthcare services to poverty alleviation within the country. But the team I'm specifically serving on is looking to scale their specific poverty alleviation method called graduation globally. And so we're working right now to bring it to different countries and to be able to scale it in large cohorts, so of 100,000 plus people essentially going through this 2-year poverty alleviation program. And so we're attempting to do that through government because we believe that's the best way in order to really to really create lasting and inclusive impact, and to make sure that we're able to to really make sure that we're able to ensure that people don't slip back into the poverty trap. I think that's like the biggest element of our specific mission. And then within that, I'm serving on the communications team. And so I do a lot of the digital communications work. So in terms of like managing our platforms, managing our website, but I also do a lot of writing and content development and things like that too. We're a pretty small team and overall like very nimble because we're a growing team, and we're kind of a new approach for BRAC because we're a global team and we come together from very many different countries in order to be on this collective mission in terms of trying to push more people out of extreme poverty. And so it's a very unique model. It's like something I feel very lucky to be a part of because I think it's great to be able to work with colleagues from different countries, from very different career backgrounds, but we're all very passionate about the idea that graduation is one of the most effective ways to break the poverty trap. And so we're really unified in our mission and how we're working together. And so I think it's great to have that sort of cross-country global collaboration in order to work on a mission together. And so I think that's been probably the most rewarding part of the job. And so, I just see myself as a small function of that larger mission and larger goal.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And you were, I think you were sharing, like outside of this podcast itself, that you had an opportunity to go to the UN, and like were able to kind of collaborate more with the international community there as well.
Yeah. We were recently at the UN hosts a conference about every 10 years, and it's the specific office is the one that deals with least developed countries, landlocked countries, and small states. And so they have a conference every 10 years that brings together the least developed countries or those countries that have LDC status within the UN system. And so they met in Doha this year. And so we went as a civil society organization to really advocate for, making sure that we're reaching the people that are furthest behind in our efforts. Because there's a Doha program of action that a lot of countries will use as a momentum building tool, something that it's a 10-year plan that they're, planning on implementing following the conference. And so as a CSO, we're just there to urge policymakers to make sure that we're in our efforts, not forgetting the people that are the most marginalized and those furthest behind, because in order to, reach the overall mission that both the Doha Program of Action puts forward, as well as other UN entities about leaving no one behind, it's very important to focus and prioritize those that are often like the most marginalized, because that will, in effect, be able to move all of us progressively forward and be able to move all the LDCs forward as well. So focusing on people in extreme poverty is our top priority. And that's something that we're trying to advocate for all government programs and governments do collectively in order to make that mission a reality.
Yeah, that's really awesome. So I can imagine, so there's a couple of things that are like coming up for me. One is, I think, as someone who's just kind of like started kind of working in this communications role for BRAC, what does a day-to-day look like for you? And then are there like challenges being in a space where the program and the work is happening within Bangladesh, but you're located in the US, and like how do you deal with those types of challenges?
So day to day, in terms of like the team that I'm on, we are really quite globally positioned. So while BRAC itself is based in Bangladesh, the Ultra Poor Graduation Initiative is a global team. So, you know, we have a lot of us that are based in DC. We have many colleagues working out of Nairobi. We have colleagues in India, Pakistan, Rwanda, the UK. So we're really like, I'm sure I'm forgetting to list all of them, but we're quite globally based. So in terms of day-to-day work, I think like the meetings we have obviously alter and change based on time difference needs. And for me, like a day-to-day really varies quite strongly, but mostly it's based on what's happening at the country level. So if there are key meetings that our country team members are focused on in terms of meeting with government representatives, or perhaps there's an event that they're looking to engage at, to what kind of communication support we can offer them. And so that's really what sort of guides my day-to-day work. But there is also an aspect of trying to monitor and engage with content that's happening at the global level. So if there is, you know, a new report put out by the World Bank on poverty, that's like something we're going to want to comment on and something that we're going to want to engage with because it's in our wheelhouse of expertise. And we have a lot of people on the team that obviously have that knowledge and want to continue to advocate for those in extreme poverty. So that's sort of what drives the work, I would say, day to day, like in terms of just like very brass tacks. It can look like, you know, writing content for social media. It can look like writing a blog post for our website. It can look like doing press outreach with media contacts. A lot of it is, you know, analytics reporting to figure out how to better improve our strategy, and collaborating very closely with my colleagues on our policy team, as well as our program design and monitoring and evaluation and learning team. So it's, again, a lot of cross collaboration. But for me, like, again, I'm on the communications team. So I think people that are in that space sort of know a lot of it. A lot of the things that you're focused on is writing and content development to support the mission of the organization and the work of your other colleagues. And so that's really what drives my day-to-day work.
That's really awesome. And so in terms of, because it seems like I'm like piecing together this kind of puzzle of like how you're working as we talk. And so something that's coming across to me is like you're kind of responding to the policies that are happening, or and like the reports that are being released at the international level. And then it seems like your communications work is mostly centered around promoting the work of BRAC in the nations that you're within.
Yeah, to some degree. I think a lot of the communications work is responding and leveraging opportunities that are coming at a global level, but then also basically acting on opportunities that we have at the country level. So for us, like I said, we're scaling graduation, which is a specific poverty alleviation method. It's a set of sequence interventions that take course over 2 years. It's a very specific program that's tailored for different cultural contexts, which, you know, I think it's very interesting if people want to read about it. But and it's been heavily studied and researched, and there are a lot of trial and data that shows that it's an evidence-backed program. But because we're trying to scale graduation globally, a lot of the work that we're doing on a day-to-day basis is influenced by, like you said, what's needed at the country level. Like opportunities that are presenting themselves in terms of relationships that we're building with government partners to be able to scale it in specific countries. And so that can really change and drive the nature of work. A lot of that looks more like, again, like preparing talking points or preparing a presentation or really preparing like a narrative to talk about, how do you scale graduation effectively, and offering a lot of like education and educational and knowledge products in connection to graduation. Because it's, again, it's a very like, there's like a very technical aspect to it that some people are looking to learn, and some people are just looking to learn about the impact and what kind of impact they can see in country with the people within their population that's experiencing extreme poverty. And so again, like I think based on what's happening with each of our countries, that sort of determines what the work looks like for me, but also for the team more broadly.
So you kind of told us a little bit about the program, but can you tell us kind of how does this program actually work for those who are in extreme poverty? And what are kind of the studies that have been done to show its effectiveness? Yeah, take your time. This was like out of the blue. So. Yeah. Yeah.
In terms of it. So the graduation approach specifically is a multifaceted set of interventions that have been designed to address the complex nature of extreme poverty. And there are 4 like key elements that are fundamental to implementing graduation and breaking the poverty trap, so that for long-term impact in any geographic or community context. But again, like the key element is that it's tailored very specifically for the community or country that you're working with. And so the foundational pillars of graduation include meeting people's basic needs, because we have the belief that many people experiencing extreme poverty lack the necessities to survive. So without making sure that they have basic food supplies or health services, you can't really take and talk to them about, income generation or anything else that would be additional to that, because without meeting someone's basic needs, it's like the first step in terms of making sure that you can see progress in their life afterwards. So besides meeting basic needs, there's also income generation. So, helping participants identify a livelihood. So some way that they are able to either find a formal job or a productive asset, or to start a micro business, something like that essentially allows them to create a sustainable livelihood for themselves. And then the third pillar is talking more about financial support and savings. So a lot of the participants in this program will do this through like a savings group that comes together collectively, or through other type of financial literacy support. And so it's really about making sure that participants have direct access to both convenient formal or informal savings facilities and financial services, so that they can plan for the future, save and borrow responsibly. It also includes financial literacy training and participation in savings group. And the fourth pillar, and one that is very important, and it comes in very different forms, is social empowerment. And really the key example we provide is coaching. So the fact is, all these participants, in order to really allow them to leverage all the other pillars, coaching is very critical to increasing their confidence, integrating it into their own community. Oftentimes, the people that are experiencing extreme poverty, or those that are categorized as ultra poor, tend to be, even within a community that's overall like perhaps impoverished, the people that are on the margins are often outside of the common society. Perhaps they don't get invited to common like community events. They don't really have a lot of integration within the community. So having that social empowerment is quite critical in order to increase their confidence and to really integrate them back into the community and develop a range of life skills. And I can just say anecdotally, when I visited the graduation program in Bangladesh and saw firsthand for myself how coaching takes place, I can also just say that for a lot of people in extreme poverty, they often just don't get regular recognition or regular check-ins where someone's coming in and asking them how they are, and like really caring and showing investment in their progress. And so coaching is such an important element because for some people in extreme poverty, this is the first time they're getting that type of specific attention and an investment in their progress. And so that's why I would say that's a really critical part of graduation, and why I think, and it's been studied. There are a lot of research. There's a lot of research done on the importance of psychosocial support, is how it's phrased in the academic community, and when you pair it with economic inclusion or financial inclusion programs, and why it's so important. So coaching, mentorship, and peer-to-peer learning is like the other critical element of graduation. So these 4 pillars together essentially come and are set up as sequenced interventions over the course of 2 years. And so the idea is that after these 2 years, people will graduate out of extreme poverty. And the evidence shows us over the course of 20 years of studying this in Bangladesh specifically, that after graduating from this program, almost 95% of participants graduate and they stay out of extreme poverty, which is a really high success rate, I guess is the best way to say it, in terms of why it's such an effective poverty alleviation method. So yeah, that's graduation in a nutshell, and I probably did not do the best job explaining it, but that's sort of just to get a sense of how it works. And so it's been tested in Bangladesh specifically, but now the idea is to take it and move it, and it's been implemented in other countries, but it just hasn't been scaled. And when we're talking about scale, we're talking about, hundreds of thousands of people going through the program in a large sets of cohorts to make sure that we're able to do that, because that's how you can really make a dent in terms of eradicating poverty. Is you need something that can be scaled, because it's great when it can be tailored and it, you have a very small set of people going through the program, but in terms of really having impact on a larger scale, you need to be able to bring those numbers up. And there are a lot of really good examples of how this program has been, already there. The graduation model has traveled across the country. Like there's a program in Bihar, India that has already been implemented. There's a program through Kenya's government. They have a social economic inclusion program that also uses the graduation model. And so we're already seeing that these examples exist. And so it really proves that it can, it's not that it only works in Bangladesh, that it can work globally, and that it is a really effective poverty alleviation method. And so that's why we're working to scale globally and reach millions more living in extreme poverty.
That's great. And so in your work in communications in the US, are you promoting it to get funding for programs in Bangladesh, or are you actually trying to scale or try the program out in the US?
So we actually don't have a focus in the US at all. This program is really designed to be south to south. So it's coming out of Bangladesh and is designed to support poverty alleviation in other countries in the global south. And so that's really where we're working and where the communications efforts are. In terms of a lot of global entities, obviously we're trying to, talk about why targeting the extreme poor and talking about the technical aspects of graduation with different multilaterals and bilaterals and, organizations that work on a global scale. And so that part of it is a little bit different, but in terms of where graduation is actually being implemented and where we're talking about it, it's mostly focused in the global south and not really in the United States. Our team, I happen to be based here, but in terms of where the work is actually happening, it's all in the global south. But again, like I said, there is the element of the World Bank, IMF, there are, the UN entities, those are all different organizations that sort of come into play because they have influence and obviously help set global agendas that countries will then, take to, and it's an important interaction within the overall ecosystem. But in terms of the work and how it's really being focused, it's really at the country level, and at the country level in the global south specifically.
Yeah, that's helpful to understand. And I think also helpful to distinguish, because I know there are like organizations like the Grameen Bank, who have like branches that are now in the US and they're specifically set up for US context. So sometimes it can be a little bit confusing as to where it's actually being applied. But that makes a lot of sense. Let's see. So for others who might be inspired by the kind of work that you do, what advice or guidance would you give to them?
So I think for people that are hoping to work in nonprofits or work in social change and maybe work in communications more specifically, I think the number one piece of advice I always say is like try gaining experience in any way you can. I did a lot of volunteer work early on in my career. Not to say that I promote free labor, but I do think it helps in terms of just testing like what kind of work you're passionate about, how do you build your skills. And I think a lot of times, especially when you're a student, it's like easier to like fill in your free hours by doing volunteer work and try to gain that experience the best way you can. I remember I volunteered for a domestic violence shelter in my college town for many years while I was there, because it was just, and I initially started off as a volunteer, just like, going and observing court cases for domestic violence survivors, but then later on was supporting their communications team just because it was an issue area that I really care about, and I found it to be a good opportunity. But it also helped me understand how communications is important to an organization at that level, focused on, a local community of that scale, but also talking about domestic violence more broadly. And so that was a really important learning for me. And I think that I would say for people that are early on in their career, if you can find opportunities like that, that's really great. And that will sort of give you the experience that you're curious about. I think besides that, I would say, like, again, I think having conversations with people that do jobs that you're curious about have always really helped me. Like I always have had no issues sometimes like reaching out to people cold on LinkedIn, and just because their bio seemed really interesting, and sometimes that leads to success and sometimes it doesn't. But I think it's worth trying and talking to people, especially also when you meet them in real life. I think it's really great when you're a student, because I think people are really happy and eager to help students because you're in that period in your life that you're learning and you're trying so many different things, and you have access to a lot of people, both in the academic space and professional space. And so I think leveraging that and really making use of that is very, very helpful. I feel like I had so many great conversations with professors when I was younger, just about what my career goals were and like what kind of impact I was hoping to have, but also just like what kind of life I was looking to lead. And it's like great to be able to have those conversations with people that are eager to support you, and they're in the academic space for that reason, because they like engaging with young students and young people that are, just at the beginning of their career. Same with internships, same with like entry-level positions. Like I think anywhere you are, like go out of your way to make connections and like learn about how people have pursued their different career opportunities, because I think that can be very, very valuable and very helpful. And then besides that, I think just like read a lot and try to understand how this, like if you're very passionate about a specific issue area that you're hoping to work on, try and figure out like where the key players are, what kind of organizations are doing the work that aligns with your mission. I feel like I've found really great work opportunities that way, like even from publications that think tanks have put out and been like, oh yeah, that's like a place I'd want to work, or like learning about a program like graduation and thinking like that's the place that I really like aligns with my values and I would want to contribute to. And again, like for me, like working for an organization based in the global South was really important. If I was going to work in development, I really wanted it to be from a position where I was helping uplift a Southern voice. Just because you don't see that as much, and it's really quite dominated by the global North in a lot of circumstances. So again, I think try and identify those opportunities and take learnings and say yes to different conversations can really help just build new opportunities for you and try to drive you in a direction. I always think it's also just helpful to know that no one's career trajectory is like a very linear progress. Like I've taken jobs and not necessarily always known what they would do for me. Like in the long run, I just knew that I was curious about learning about this issue area. I knew that I had met people that seemed really great to work with, and that motivated me um, to pursue the opportunity. But I think sometimes like you feel pressure to like create a very clear line in terms of how you're progressing in your career, but I just don't think that's the reality of it. And it's okay to sort of sit with that discomfort sometimes too.
Yeah. Sorry, there's like a dog working in the background.
You're totally fine. My cat's been sitting here on my lap this whole time, and I'm just happy that she hasn't been meowing or anything.
Yeah, I kept seeing like fur falling, and I was like, wait, where's this coming from?
It's my cat. Yeah.
I'll edit this part out. But what's it called? It's really been great kind of just listening to your voice and your perspective today. And if folks want to get in touch with you in any way, what would you recommend to them?
I think just emailing me would be good. If you, I don't know if there are like notes or something that information can be added in, but like emailing me is the best way, I think. And I'm always really happy to talk to anyone at any stage in their career in terms of like questions or recommendations that you might, that they're looking for. I don't feel like I have all the solutions by any means, but I feel like I've gone through the job search process plenty of time. So happy to be, just a person to talk to, or to, just be bouncing a wall for ideas or anything like that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here today. I think that our audience will take a lot away from this conversation, not only just about like your work overall and your life experiences, but also the program and the just like the uniqueness of it as and how it's been implemented across different countries and different regions. So thank you. And we hope that you come back again in the future.
Thank you. I appreciate you again, like creating the space and having these conversations. I think it's really interesting to see how BASIs have, entered different career fields that perhaps were not considered traditional many years back, but obviously like we are now represented in a lot of different spaces. And I think it's great to see that elevation. And I think it's great that people coming into different industries now have that representation that they can look for, because that's not necessarily I always had when I was entering, but now it feels like it's constantly diversifying and changing, which I think is really exciting. So thanks for creating the space.
Yeah, thank you. And then for folks who are in the audience, please like and subscribe so we can continue bringing you more content in the future. Thank you for joining us today for this conversation with our guest. If you would like to connect with our guest or check out their work, please go to the link provided in the show notes in the caption. If you learned anything from this conversation or are enjoying the podcast, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. That is a wonderful zero-cost way to support us. Also, please subscribe to the podcast on both Spotify and Apple. And on both of them, you can leave us up to a 5-star review. If you have any questions that you would like to ask me about the podcast or any guests you would like me to have on in future episodes, please leave them in the comments below or DM me on Instagram at our rethinkdesi account. And with that, I hope you have a wonderful day, folks.